Well, good morning, and thank you very much for coming today. I hope that I'll be able to tell you some interesting thoughts about nutrition that maybe you hadn't really understood. It's a privilege to work with Vision and for them to look after some of my finances, and I really want to thank Ferdy for I can now retire in a month's time safely with Yeah, I think you all know that we've kind of turned the world upside down in nutrition, and I didn't plan to do it at all. I used to tell people they must eat lots of carbohydrate, and carbohydrate is very healthy, because that's what I was told. And I did that for 33 years. For 33 years, I did exactly what I was told. And guess what? I developed type 2 diabetes. This is a person who doesn't smoke, who doesn't drink, who runs 70 marathons, who does everything right, and he gets diabetes. And I have to ask why? Why did I get it? Well, my family history. I've got a very strong family history. There are 400 million people with my condition. It is the most common condition in the entire world, and we are causing it by our nutrition advice. A year ago exactly, the book was released, The Real Meal Revolution, and all it says is eat real foods. That's what you've got to do. Stop eating processed foods. If the food has a label on the back and you have to read it, don't eat it. And that's the food that we prescribe, and people tell me that I'm criminal. There's a cardiologist in Johannesburg who says I'm a criminal for telling people to eat that food. That's astonishing. You do not want to eat sugar ever, and processed foods are full of sugar. You do not want to eat flour, as I explained to you, and you don't want to eat vegetable oils. If you cut those three out, your health will improve dramatically. Please listen to that carefully. Carbohydrates make you hungry. And the more you eat, the more frequently you have to eat. And so this is what happened. That's carbohydrate-induced hyperphagia. You overeat when you eat carbohydrates because carbohydrates are addictive. And sugar particularly is as addictive as cocaine and heroin. So on the tables in front of you, you have the most common drug in the world distributed free to you. And it's very dangerous for your health. Currently, 50% of all Americans, 50%, that's 150 million, have either diabetes or pre-diabetes, meaning they are going to get diabetes within the next 10 or 15 years. If you are at risk from eating too much carbohydrate, firstly, your apostat must go wrong, and secondly, you need to be insulin resistant. So you need to know the two conditions. And we don't know which one's more important, whether it's the apostat failure or it's the insulin resistance. But it's the two combined that really hurt your health. And what happens if you're insulin resistant is every time you take carbohydrate, you will form fat. So insulin is the fat-building hormone. But more importantly, the insulin prevents the fat cell releasing the fat. So if you have cereals this morning, you will want to eat in 3 hours' time because your insulin levels will be continually high and they will prevent the fat cell from releasing the fat. And your brain will say, oh, but I'm hungry, I've got no energy, and you've got to eat again. Whereas if you keep your insulin levels low, you've got all this fat coming out, and your brain says, but I've got so much energy, why should I bother to eat? And that's the key point about this. Every day, people come up to me and say, Dr. Noakes, your diet has changed my life. And I can promise you, they all have non-celiac gluten intolerance. And as soon as they take the wheat out, they feel so much better. People on this diet will tell you, I've suddenly got so much energy. My profession tells you, you're lazy, you overeat, you get fat, you get insulin resistance, you get diabetes. That's nonsense. You start with insulin resistance. That's the key starting point. Insulin resistance by itself doesn't cause heart disease. That's what causes heart disease. It's the high carbohydrate diet in insulin resistance that causes heart disease. Just to let you know that there have been 24 randomized controlled trials in which people are put on a high fat or a high carbohydrate diet. In the 24 studies I'm referring to, the high fat diet outperforms the low fat diet. Outperforms it. And you're never told that. And I'm criticized for suggesting that the high fat diet was good for you. And why do we get it all wrong? Because of groupthink. We have this groupthink, which I was also guilty of. And groupthink is a mode of thinking used by members of a cohesive in-group whose desire for unanimity overrides any motivation to appraise alternate course of actions. Because if you have groupthink and you jump out it like I did, you get criticized. The good news is that type 2 diabetes can be reversed in some people. And it's not cured. It's not cured. These people will still have the propensity to develop diabetes if they eat a high carbohydrate diet. I want to show you what Billy Tosh looks like 7 months later, 28 weeks later. So in other words, you think forward to May next year. What would you like to look like? And if you look like Billy, this is what he looked like 28 weeks later. Yeah. 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 And that's what they look like today. And there were only 3 rules. There are only 3 rules you need to know if you want to make that conversion. No processed foods, no processed foods, no sugar, and only 25 grams of carbohydrate a day. And that's the outcome. There can be no other outcome if you follow those 3 rules. And the reason why this diet works is because these 2 guys are no longer hungry. If you ask them, they will tell you, I'm not hungry. But how can you be hungry, or how can you be perpetually hungry when you're that weight and never hungry if you're that weight? And that's because of the addictions. And I literally get pictures like this every week of a woman who's completely changed her everything. We used to live like this. We used to live to 80, and we woke up dead one morning. Poof. We didn't have this chronic ill health, which we have now. And I'm just trying to tell you that the chronic ill health is caused by what you eat. And we don't have to go like this. We can all go like this and that. And that's what we should be aiming for. Thank you very much for your attention.